Hello, and welcome to the TomorrowZone Catalyst podcast. I'm Alyssa Bartlett, a member of the TomorrowZone team and your host for this episode. Today, we're turning the tables. I'm stepping into the interviewer role to dive into the mind of Deb Reuben, the driving force behind the TomorrowZone. Deb is a recognized industry innovator, strategist, and thought leader with a passion for reshaping the future of business. In this episode, we are getting curious about how TomorrowZone partnered with the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association, or ELFA, Innovation Advisory Council, to help industry leaders embrace the art of the possible. Let's get into it. Welcome, Deb.
Thanks. So fun to have you as our host today. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So tell me, what was the catalyst for the ELFA Innovation Advisory Council? Why was this needed in the industry?
Yeah, this is an interesting story. So I've been involved in this industry for quite a while. Throughout my whole career, I've been innovating in the equipment finance space. So ELFA is the largest trade association in the equipment finance industry. It's a more than $1 trillion industry that is focused on equipment financing and leasing of the type of equipment that any kind of business uses to make awesome happen. And so it's very interesting. It's very diverse. And in the summer of 2018, ELFA's CEO at the time, Ralph Petta, reached out to me and they had a problem. And the challenge that he was sharing with me is that given the rapid rise of exponentially advancing technologies, fintech disruptors, when it comes to innovation and technology adoption, the industry was falling behind. And they saw a gap in executive level innovation discussion and engagement in the industry. And so they had operational and technology committees. They were doing an operations and technology conference. And every once in a while, there would be a session or two at different industry events that would cover technology and innovation, but nothing that was really geared specifically toward the executive level. And everything else was really geared more toward middle management and, tactics and tools. But really what we were looking for is a dedicated forum for C and senior level leaders to explore emerging trends and their strategic impact and implications specifically for this industry. So they were really looking for, a way to catalyze new thinking about the role of technology and innovation in business within this space. And so we worked with ELFA to create a working group, and we recruited 18 different C-level and senior leaders that represented a cross-section of the ecosystem. And so we brought in leaders from lessors, finance companies, and we had good balance between bank, independent, and captive so that we had the different lenses because they all have a different business context. But then we also engaged with service providers as well as disruptive fintech startups. So those companies that were coming into the industry and starting up, in a sort of a tech forward way and really bringing business model disruption. And so it was a really diverse group, and we got together and we set a vision to really work together to inspire new thinking about technology and innovation among equipment finance industry leaders. And then our mission was to create new opportunities to explore technology and innovation practices and their current and potential application to the industry. And so all of that together was really driving an influence for the association as far as the content that was being delivered at their various events and publications, and even led to quarterly virtual innovation roundtables, which TomorrowZone designed and hosted for the industry for 3.5 years. And so it really was meant to engage leaders in a new type of discussion about the role of innovation in our industry.
that is a long time to be working on this and to be meeting around innovation with senior leaders.
Yeah, 6 fun-filled years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before we started, really, it was not a top of mind topic that would be covered in, say, the executive roundtable forum, for instance, or even at the annual convention. It was, back then, it was tough to get technology and innovation related topics on the schedule and the agenda for these big industry events. And so, there really was a gap, and shout out to that board who recognized the importance of it at the time, because, it was around that time that the industry was starting to wake up to, hey, we should probably pay attention to what's going on with all of these different categories of exponentially advancing technologies. What does this mean for us? But there was really no place for folks to come together and explore that.
Yeah, I think even in 2018, that was pretty forward thinking of them as an industry as a whole. I'm curious what TomorrowZone's approach was to making this initiative be different from other existing industry committees or forums.
Well, I mean, first of all, it was a working group, and I think it was really great that ELFA was so open-minded, because they were like, okay, we know we want something. The board wants this to happen, and we want you to lead it. We have no idea what this is. We don't know what it looks like, but we do know that we need to be paying attention to technology and trends and what they mean for the future of our industry, so that we're not left behind, so that we're not being surprised and disrupted all over the place. And we did give a lot of thought to that, because there was another committee that was dedicated to operations and technology and really, around execution and best practices and stuff like that. But it was kind of a different audience and a different purpose. What we were doing is really continually engaging in a trend scanning exercise. Every month we came together, and with this diverse group, we looked at what's going on, what's new, what are you seeing, what are you doing? And it wasn't one-way content presentation, which is what you usually see at association type events. It was actually an engaging, facilitated discussion among peers. And that was really valuable, because we were continually looking at not only what's going on within our industry across various categories, societal, technological, environmental, economic, political, and what does all that mean for what we need to do with technology, or where there are opportunities for innovation. But also, it was a way for people to connect, learn, and collaborate in a cross-industry manner. There in the past have not been a lot of opportunities to do that, and it was really, really special. We hand selected, over the course of those 6 years, 41 different senior leaders across 31 different companies. And so we did have a lot of thought diversity in that group. We had some people that stayed with us, all 6 years from the time that we founded it. And then we had others, that moved on and started up new companies or left the industry. The interesting thing was we had perspectives that were coming from outside of the industry. And we were continually looking at not only what's going on within our industry, but what do we need to be aware of that's going on around us that we need to bring back into this industry? What's possible? Where are the threats? Where are the opportunities? And what could that mean in equipment finance? So it really was a different kind of discussion that was meant to influence, okay, where are we seeing patterns in this trend scanning that could influence the content and the discussions that we need to be driving throughout the year among ELFA's members? So I think that the interactive, peer-driven format and the continual attention to making time to step away from day to day and get into what we call the Tomorrow Zone, but actually looking at what's going on with technology, innovation, and trends, and then applying it to what do we need to do today to shape a more awesome future for ourselves, for our companies, and for our industry. I think that is really what made it different. It has a different purpose and a different mindset, which then leads to a different outcome.
Yeah, it's a very unique approach. I'm curious, over the course of leading these innovation roundtables that you mentioned and the trend sessions that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
was there anything that surprised you about how these leaders were engaging with innovation?
It was interesting because we had a lot of diverse perspectives in the group as far as, the role that they're playing within their company or even their role within the industry ecosystem at large. But we found that we had a lot of things in common. It was interesting when we first started. I think the assumption was that it was going to be more about technology and more about, software, hardware, like the actual technical aspects of innovation. But the thing that emerged continually as we were coming together as leaders and exploring what's going on with these different technology trends is that we never got away from talking about the importance of the human side of innovation. It always came back to, what do we need to do as leaders? How do we affect our culture? What is the mindset that we need to even be able to embrace and adopt these changes, whether it was a new method or framework to drive innovation within a company, or whether it was actually bringing in a new technology innovation like AI? Where does that apply in our industry? Or, blockchain was a topic along the way, Internet of Things, robotics, autonomous mobility. I mean, there were so many things that we could be looking at, but it was surprising right away within the first year. The trend that we started to see is that, oh, wow, we really do have to pay attention to the human side and the human impact here. That's really how we're going to be able to make a difference and really encourage and drive adoption and embracing technology and digital transformation, business model innovation, rather than the resistance that we were getting in the past. The other thing I saw was interesting. Well, not surprising, but I mean, we've been at this for 6 years. So we did over 56 trend scanning sessions. And the first few years, AI would come up here and there. Of course, when ChatGPT was released into the wild in November of 22, AI came up every single month. We could not get away from it. Before then, whenever we were influencing content or we were driving sessions for the annual convention or other events that we influenced content for ELFA, it was really hard to find leaders that were willing to share their AI use cases or how they're using AI in their company. And fast forward last spring, when ELFA reached out to us about sharing at their executive roundtable, we shared over 68 use cases for AI that are already in production across the industry. And so, that was in 5 years. It just illustrates like the rapid advance and the rapid change. But at the same time, when you look at what's going on with AI, it's still slow. We're just not even scratching the surface of what's possible. And so, there's so much value to stepping away from day to day to explore the art of the possible, to really look at what's possible now, but then also to have the space to ask the question without judgment, what's next? What do you think about it? And build on each other's ideas and share. And that leads me to the other surprise, which was that people who are leading innovation in various companies across the industry and especially in finance companies, innovation leaders and executives are really crave a safe space for exploring these topics. And those spaces are tough to find. Finding that environment where you can get together with your people who are also interested, enthusiastic to discuss and explore these topics, but also to challenge status quo in a space where it's not about knowing all the right answers. It's about being willing to have your answers questioned. And that's a totally different space than the typical culture of a finance company where you're rewarded for having the right answers. This is about curiosity. This is about exploring the art of the possible. It's about asking, not being married to what is, but being willing to ask and explore what if. And so, I think that was a surprise. And the thing that I was hearing from people that were participating is, this is a quote from somebody that participated, shared with me. I'm here because I think this is such a great forum to be exposed to new ideas, to share ideas, and really just continue learning from my industry peers. There's so much value to learning and exploring in community. And the biggest surprise is just the importance of mindset, that it wasn't actually technology itself that's holding back this industry from innovating. Mindset is the biggest barrier that came up month after month in our discussion.
So I'm curious, with talk of AI and emerging tech being hot topics, they can also feel overwhelming. So switching gears a little bit, I'm curious, from your experience with ELFA, what is the most practical way for leaders to start embracing these emerging technologies?
So, first of all, is you've got to really raise your awareness of what's possible. So that's part of it. Paying attention to what's going on, and actually intentionally paying attention to what's new, what's possible now. And there's so many ways that you can do that. Connecting with industry peers, the different types of newsletters or periodicals that you subscribe to. Of course, media is a great place to learn about these trends, but also when you're out and about and you're interacting with people, just, being curious and asking, hey, what's new? What are you doing with AI these days? That's a great question to ask right now. So, being aware of what's possible, but then also not starting with the technology, but actually looking for real world use cases. How do you connect these great technology possibilities with what you need to be able to achieve within your business? Because tech for tech's sake doesn't add business value. And so really it's about looking for real business problems that would be very valuable to solve. And then matching the possibilities that you see with tech to solving those real business problems.
So, speaking of real business problems to solve, leaders in many industries, including equipment finance, struggle with legacy systems and risk-averse cultures. How do you help senior leaders shift from seeing innovation as a buzzword to making it a real strategic priority?
One of the things that we did together as an innovation council, so during the 6 years, we evolved from an informal working group to an actual formal business council, the Innovation Advisory Council. And I guess one of the things that we were doing is to continue to broaden the engagement with leaders in discussions about these topics. So part of it was let's educate them on what's possible, because not every business leader has a technology background or has a focus on innovation. But if you're leading a company today, you do have to have an eye on what's going on and how technology is interwoven into the fabric of your business and how it enables you to achieve your strategic objectives for your business. And so, part of it was really education, but then also facilitating conversations. We led quarterly innovation roundtables for 3.5 years, where the topics would actually rise up from what we were seeing in those trend scanning sessions every month. We would start to see patterns, and then we would realize, you know what, this is something we really need to to bring up and talk about in our roundtable or in whatever event was coming up. And so one of the things that we would talk about with leaders is really framing innovation as a business strategy, not just about technology adoption. Looking at what are the pain points in your business, what are the ways that you want to create value, and then really stepping back and taking a look at what is it that we need to do so that we can improve our business, improve growth, and how do we change what's going on with people, process, and technology to do that. We also created these opportunities for people to connect with each other. And so, for instance, when we were hosting these roundtables on innovation topics, it wasn't just about having a table or a panel of innovation leaders speaking from their expertise and their experience about these topics, whether it's AI or balancing innovation with business as usual. I mean, all sorts of different topics we explored together. But we also intentionally designed these events to be engaging and to create space for people to connect with each other on these same topics so that we were going deep on the topic rather than just, skimming the surface of it. And I think creating space to actually focus on having these conversations is one way to really help leaders to embrace new possibilities, but also learn from other leaders. What are the practices that they are implementing and the ways that they're leading that help to overcome some of the resistance that you naturally get when you're introducing change, especially with technology and innovation initiatives?
Yeah, I know I've always worked in small businesses and been one of a very few number of leaders within an organization. And so I always found it really helpful to be connecting with leaders in other businesses, whether they're in the same industry or different industries, because really the challenges we face as leaders transcend industry. And so I really, that concept of connecting with peers and having a space to connect with peers who are going through similar things that you're going through is really valuable. That really
yeah, and it's hard to do too because you think about what's the day to day of a leader. They're usually putting out fires. They're trying to hit this quarter's numbers. They're not thinking, how do I need to think about technology 3 years from now? What does that mean for me today? But that's an important thing to think about.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen in your day to day. You have to actually intentionally make space for it. And that's really what this was meant to do. And, the other thing we talked about, and we would actually showcase people, sharing their stories and their case studies is, when we're thinking about introducing innovative change, one of the things we talked about a lot, and this is actually value at TomorrowZone, is, think big. We want to think long term and we want to make awesome happen. So we want to think big. But if we really want to turn ideas to action, we need to start small and we need to learn forward fast. And I think that was a theme that came out over and over and over again as we heard leaders from all walks of life across the industry talking about what it really takes to lead innovation and, shape a future ready company. Is you have to be agile, anticipatory, but you also have to iterate. You can't do everything at once. And there's a lot of learning involved.
Yes. And one of the biggest challenges in innovation is moving from discussion to real business results. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, can you share a success story where a company took insights from the Innovation Council and turned them into tangible value?
Yeah, I did hear stories from companies that would attend our sessions, and that would lead to experiments. So they might hear of something either from the main panel discussion, or they might hear it in the peer-to-peer discussion that was going on at the event. And then they would take that back to their own company, and it would actually inspire, a pilot or an experiment or something. The other thing that we would year coming out of this was that people would have the opportunity to actually be exposed to new possibilities that they might not discover within the four walls of their own company. And so having that chance to kind of get out of your day to day and explore a little bit and connect with your peers, people would start to actually take action in learning more or researching something, more deeply, or even implementing a change in process that might shave some time off of some tasks that they were doing because they heard a best practice and then they were able to take that idea and apply it directly to their day to day. One of the things that we were always looking for in these facilitated peer-to-peer discussions is what is something that you're taking from this discussion that you're going to apply when you get back to work. And so it was fun to hear the ways that people were actually doing this. But another thing that I noticed along the way that I thought was really interesting, one of the great business values in companies today is their people. It's one of the greatest assets of a company is your people. And so how do you develop your people and help them to think, develop this forward thinking insight and to get fresh ideas about what's possible for the future. And one of the trends that we started to see a couple of years into this is companies that started to come back over and over again, not just with one person, but they would bring teams. And they were using it as a way to actually develop their teams as a part of their professional development. So, I thought that was really cool because any forward-thinking leader sending their people to an event like this, I mean, my advice would be go with intention and prime your people so that they know when they come back, you want to hear all of the great new ideas that they have because they were interacting with peers and they were learning about new possibilities. And so I think that, there was a lot of business value that came out of it for people that actually applied what they were hearing, but also as far as professional growth for the folks that sent their teams.
So I have a final question here. Given everything that you've seen with this initiative, I'm wondering, Deb, what's next? How do you see innovation evolving in the equipment finance industry?
Well, I think one of the things I'm most proud of that this group accomplished is that we no longer need to convince leaders in the equipment finance space that innovation is a necessity. It has definitely gone from novelty to necessity. And I feel really good about that.
A culture shift, really.
Yeah. We've definitely changed the conversation about innovation. We don't have to beg to get an innovation session into an industry event. Mm-hmm. People are clamoring for it. And there's so much happening now, so I think it's not only, what this group has been doing to really drive that conversation and the importance of innovation, but also the things that are happening in our world as we're seeing, the exponential advancement of AI marching up that exponential curve. It's like, what's the disruption today? What am I going to learn? What's obsolete now? So, I think that's a really good thing because now I think people understand just how important it is to be paying attention to technology and trends and thinking about what does this mean for our future? And based on those futures that we see, what do we need to be doing now? When it comes to evolving the innovation conversation within ELFA, I really, I'm excited. There's new leadership. And the whole theme of the last annual convention in October was all about going to the next level. And I think that this industry is ready for the next level of innovation conversation, whether that's bringing in people from the outside to inspire fresh thinking, new experiences, new voices, new focus on trend scanning. And so I'm really excited to see how that takes shape. And, they're going to be announcing some new changes in the future, and I'm really excited for how that's going to play out. But I think that, when I look at the future of our industry, what's next, I really see a need for business model innovation. It's not just about technology adoption, but a lot of the way that companies were designed is based on the way that business and technology operated in the last century. Who's designing for where things are going? That's totally different. And imagine an AI first company where you've got the best of what humans can do, plus the best of what agentic AI can do. And you're designed to leverage both data and automation to create the best human experience for both your employees and your customers. What will that company look like? That's what I'm excited to see for the future.
I think I kind of know what that company looks like, because I think that company looks like the TomorrowZone, because that's exactly what we're doing. And if you just take our podcast here as an example, we've really woven in leveraging technology into our processes to do the work of many.
Oh, yeah. There's only 5 people in our company, and I think that we get 10x productivity out of 5 people because, we are AI forward. We've been leveraging AI tools since 2016. And, we haven't stopped experimenting. We haven't stopped exploring, but also we're intentionally as a team working on our mindset as AI continues to evolve. What do we need to do as humans to evolve our mindset so that we can embrace and effectively work with these tools as they continue to grow and expand and change at such a rapid pace? And, I am really curious to see what a finance company could look like with a mindset like that. There's so much more possible than what we're doing today.
That all sounds very exciting. And I'm curious what is ahead for TomorrowZone specifically.
We have a lot of awesome on the horizon. We are working on launching a cross-industry innovation community to help leaders stay ahead of disruption. And so it's going to be, private community and a safe space for people that are leading innovation and truly want to connect, learn, and collaborate with peers. So stay tuned for more on that. We're looking to launch sometime the first half of this year.
And finally, we have our TomorrowZone Catalyst signature closing question. What is one thing that leaders can do today to shape a more awesome future?
I love this question so much, so I ask it all the time. And there really isn't just one thing, but if there's one thing that I would recommend after this conversation is, as a leader, just recognize that innovation isn't a one-time event. It's a mindset, a behavior, and a habit. And so staying ahead of what's going on in innovation, preventing being left behind, it really requires an intentional mindset shift, continuous learning, and connecting with your people, the right network of peers that's really going to help you to stay on top of what's fresh, what's new, what's exciting, but also get out of your own head on those things so that you can pick up some forward-thinking insights and fresh perspectives. You don't have to innovate alone. The best breakthroughs come from those collaborative conversations.
Absolutely. Don't have to innovate in a vacuum.
Absolutely.
Well, Deb, this has been a fantastic conversation. Your insights on fostering innovation mindset and turning ideas into action are invaluable. Thank you for sharing your experience with the ELFA Innovation Advisory Council.
Thank you for asking. And it's really fun to have you hosting an episode of our show. And I also just want to recognize all of the work that you've been doing to produce our podcast since we launched it last May. It's just been such a fun journey, and I'm so glad that I can be on that journey with you, Alyssa.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really fun for me too. It's been kind of a dream of mine to produce a podcast, and so just to be involved in one is very fun. And I also want a shout out to my colleagues, Jenica and Brittany, who also help with the production process, the post-production process in particular. And we've talked about AI earlier. Jenica has built some really powerful GPTs that help us do certain portions of this process. And she's the driving force behind that, the brains behind that. And I just really appreciate her.
Awesome.
So to our listeners, if you want to stay ahead of the curve, please keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share this episode, and connect with TomorrowZone for more future-focused insights. Let's keep making awesome happen.